Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So it's been another really interesting week. Lots of things have been happening, James. Loads of conversations. I think everything's really ramping up again this year, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's February. Where did January go?
I don't know, but it's gone. We're past it now. We're so over January and we're so into February. But you know, there's 29 days in February this year.
Yeah, leap year, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know what that particularly means for the podcast, but hey, there we go. Just thought I'd bring it up. So shall I tell you what I've been up to?
Yes, please.
I started the week talking to Brad van Leuven from Cladara. Now, you will remember, and I think you did the news read on it that day. They've sponsored Cambridge United Football Club Stadium in a 5-year deal. And I'm like, that's really interesting because they have no physical presence in Cambridge, but they've sponsored the football club. So me being nosy, I went to Brad and said, let's have a chat. And they've got a really interesting approach into Cambridge, very community first, very, very people centric. So it was a really good conversation with him. Great to have another type of company interested into Cambridge. And we've definitely got to get him on the podcast at some point in time as well. He's super well connected, but in a very different way to probably the Cambridge ecosystem.
Interesting, yeah.
So I did that. I was in the Bradfield Centre, saw you on Wednesday, had quite a few meetings there, which was great. And then I hopped over the road to St John's Innovation Centre, saw loads of people over there, actually. I met Steph Martlew. She's got a new role in St John's Innovation Centre. So I had a good conversation with her, met a few clients and prospects, 3 random encounters. I always love a random encounter, which is nice. And I even bumped into today's guest as well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, indeed. And I think we've both had interesting discussions with Chris Bruce, haven't we, on Cambridge Tech Week?
Yeah. I'm not sure how much we can divulge right now, but yes, exciting things are afoot.
What would happen if we did? I mean, could we say like it's the 9th to the 13th of September, or will we even get in trouble for that?
You just did, so let's see. Okay,
all right. Let's see if he listens.
Yeah, my week was kind of similar, talking to lots of people, lots of meetings. In fact, before I get into my week, avid listeners will maybe thank you for getting a bonus 24 hours last week, because the episode went out on Saturday, didn't it, instead of Sunday?
Seriously, are you just like dropping me in it there or something? That's brutal. So Gemma's the guru of getting everything done, and she left it in my obviously incapable hands. So I set it to go live and obviously did the wrong date. So, hey, yeah, like you say, you got an extra 24 hours. Great.
It's better to go early than late. No issue there. Turns out that Apple are introducing transcripts to Apple Podcasts. So that actually might save me a job. Just a couple of weeks ago, I think I announced that we were offering transcripts of all of our episodes now. So if they're going to do it for me, I might not bother.
Do other platforms apply though?
Not at the moment, but I suspect that once Apple release it, everyone will follow suit pretty quickly. So yeah, let's see. Keep an eye on that. It's good, but it's good to see podcasting platforms getting new features. You might have heard in my voice, I've got the start of a cold, which is not great, but hopefully I'll get through this.
How is that newsworthy?
Well, I mean, clearly everyone's going to be like sending me flowers and chocolates. And
is it man flu?
Do you remember when, like in the 70s, where you used to get those bottles of Lucasade with the cellophane wrapper around them and stuff like that? No?
Yeah, is that what you want? I dare someone to buy James a bottle of Lucasade.
So maybe Lucasade might be listening and will sponsor the podcast from this point onwards. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then, in terms of actual work this week, obviously wrapping up on the Trinity Bradfield Prize. So coverage in Business Weekly and in the Cambridge Independent and various other places, which was great. And lots of really productive meetings. As you said, Chris Bruce, Cambridge Clean Tech, Trinity College, and actually, like you, kind of serendipitous bumping into people. 3 people this week approached me about coming on the podcast. So something is working.
That's great. That's great. Lovely. So that's our news, including your cold news. So should we move on to the move on to the news?
The news. Yeah, let's do the news. Yeah. So first up, we have a story from Flex Enable, who develop flexible organic electronics for optics and displays. They have launched optical evaluation kits for augmented reality and virtual reality devices. The technology was showcased in San Francisco last week.
Location tech specialist One Spatial has won a €9 million multi-year contract with a Belgian customer, which further expands the company's reach across Europe.
An interesting announcement this week from PwC Cambridge. They've announced a new digital accelerator, which will be formed of a series of 12-week innovation programs backed by multinational corporations, working with technology scale-ups, and will be spearheaded by a good friend of both of us, Abhi Nahar, who's been recruited from Cambridge Wireless to steer the venture for PwC.
And Obi was one of the people I bumped into whilst I was over at St John's Innovation Centre as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try and get him on and give us the rundown of everything he's up to.
Yeah, it'd be great to do that. In other news, quantum networking company New Quantum has won 2.3 million from the UK government to deliver a world-first modular rack mount and scalable quantum data center prototype. New Quantum is collaborating with Cisco and using the US headquartered technology giant as a prospective end user for the project. So congratulations to the New Quantum team.
Ignota Labs, an innovative company at the intersection of AI and pharmaceuticals, has relocated from London and has opened facilities at the Cambridge Science Park. The company, which won the recent Oxbridge AI Challenge, specialises in revitalising drugs with safety issues using its AI platform SafePath.
And our penultimate story is with Sampler, who we've talked about before. They've raised another $7 million to advance production of its next generation biodegradable plant materials. This takes its haul to date to $17.6 million, which is huge. The round demonstrated some significant investor confidence in Sampler. Existing backers Amadeus Capital Partners, Horizon Ventures, Cambridge Angels, Cambridge Enterprise and Martlet Capital all provided further support. And there's some new investors in the round as well. Clean Tech Champions, Czech Ventures being one of them.
And last but not least, in a very busy week, some good news on the life science building side of things. Breakthrough Properties has secured a £104 million loan and has won planning approvals to kickstart a new 175,000 square feet Cambridge Life Sciences building located at St John's Innovation Park. And the completion is anticipated to be around 2026.
And I think there's a little bit of a joke about Cambridge being Crane Bridge. You know, the cranes are obviously all around Cambridge. And I think that we're going to have so many more announcements. I think there are so many things in the pipeline. It is really exciting. So that's today's news. Let's move on then and talk to our guest for today, who is Farbod Shakouri from Phantom Technology. So Farbod, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, lovely to be here. And my name is Farbod Shakouri. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Phantom Technology Limited. So the story, without going into the entirety of it, basically happens when my co-founder Daniel and I, we both studied at Bournemouth University. We did an undergrad in games technology. And towards the end of our degree, we came across sort of what we believed was going to be the next sort of evolution of computing. To us, this was very obvious. And the reason why this was so obvious to us is because we had seen a trend where 3D real-time graphics is becoming adopted in other industries other than games and entertainment. And that trend was interesting. So for us, it was almost like, okay, clearly the internet's going to become 3D, but there's going to be new kinds of interface technologies to access the 3D content. And it was quite obvious that VR and AR were part of the interface technologies that would be crucial for the evolution of computing. So we set up Phantom Technology in 2019 with the goal of improving a fundamental problem in augmented reality. And that problem is called contextual awareness. And it's a bit of a very large scope problem because it's not necessarily an AR problem. It's actually more of an AI problem. So we had this debate, at the beginning thinking, okay, what's going to fix the problem first? Is it going to be traditional or classical feature engineering approaches, or is it going to be some kind of AGI that has to happen before there is true contextual awareness? So just to give you a bit of background what that problem is. So with augmented reality, there's a big difference between that technology and every other technology before it, which is in every sort of computing platform, whether it's desktop, whether it's, laptop or mobile devices, the experience of the applications is contained within that device, right? So it's contained within the screen of that device. It's contained within the boundaries of that device. Whereas with augmented reality, the experience is actually in the real world. So if you think about the canvas being the real world, there's a lot of uncertainty in the real world. And so you have to adapt the experience of whatever your application you're running to the uncertainties of the real world. And so you have to understand the context, you have to understand what's around you, what are the objects around you, what is the intent of the user, and incorporate all those things into some kind of system or a framework that can then understand the context and then work to transform the behaviors of the application accordingly and make it adaptive. And that problem was a big problem that's been going on for many years. And we thought that this was the time to solve that problem, because you need to solve that problem to really have true AR applications.
Probably come back to that later in the conversation in terms of how the company and the technology has developed since that early thinking. One thing I thought would be really interesting to spend some time on, especially for our listeners that are in early stage companies or thinking about starting a company, is how you looked at the opportunity. And you talked about there in your introduction about seeing 3D modeling technology being adopted outside of gaming. So maybe you could just walk us through that, because obviously for an early stage technology like AR and VR, we're seeing lots of early products come to market like Oculus and Google Glasses, and now we've got Apple Vision Pro. So you've kind of seen this opportunity with AR, VR. How did you find what verticals to go for? What was your kind of thought process of going through that?
Yeah, we actually started the business not quite sure exactly what the product's going to look like, but we just knew what problems to solve. However, our attempt initially was to create a developer toolkit. I think a lot of people make the assumption that the easiest way to build a platform is to create tool and then allow people, developers or creators to create content using your development toolkit. And I think that assumption is wrong in many ways. One of the reasons why that's a bad approach is because we basically thought, developers have money and they don't really have a lot of money. But the second problem is that it's hard to demonstrate the value proposition of your technology or your product when you're waiting for others to create things with it. So it's very hard to say our tool is great, but you need to first create something to see why it's great. So when we looked at other companies who've been successful with developing tools, what we found was actually initially they created a product. And then they released a tool that said, okay, you love this product, now use this tool to create the product just like ours. Yeah. Example of that, I think, it goes back all the way back to the beginning of game engines, where you had games, that would come out, like, for example, Quake or Unreal Tournament, which Epic then releases the Unreal Engine, which was inspiring developers to create games just like that. So we found this roadblock, which was, okay, we weren't in a position to really spend a lot of resources to build a game or an application. So we really wanted to figure out, how do we still bring a tool to the market, but still somehow demonstrate the utility of it? It was just like the sort of tricky position to be in. So we tried many verticals. We knocked on many doors. But I think the thing that hit us was we said, okay, clearly the SDK market is crowded and we're seeing the evolution of computing. What's next? Where can we position ourselves to be next, so that by the time we have brought something to the market is catching up? We always knew that the wearable market would be the biggest market, because that's sort of, going back to AR and VR, that's the killer thing. We knew that that's going to happen. The timing is unpredictable, but we know that's the next platform shift. And we as a business, our core competency is interface technologies. So we build technologies that allow you to interact with a computer system in really interesting and novel ways, combining different modalities like speech recognition, eye tracking, movement, and so on, and really taking advantage of natural language inputs or natural inputs in general to interact with a system. So we put our expertise together and really tried to look at the wearable market. And there was a problem in the wearable market, which we thought was an easier approach for us, an approach that would allow us to bring that same technology to the market, but not necessarily wait for developers to create solutions. And that was the hardware. So we went to OEMs and we found that OEMs have a big challenge, and it's very common across all of them, which is they don't know how to sell enough units, right? Every OEM wants to sell more units. It's just like a common thing. And there is many reasons for that. So we thought like, okay, we're basically trying to solve everything at that point, and it was just overwhelming. But the solution was actually quite simple. We realized, okay, the most important thing with any product is that you need to have utility out of the box. So when we tried many smart glasses, we tried many AR headsets. What we found was that majority of them, unless you're a developer or unless you have expertise in that field, when you buy one, you have no idea how to use one. So you turn it on and it's a bit like, early 2000s when you had MP3 players and you had to buy an MP3 player, download your own music, port your music over and, spend a day setting it all up. And unless you're a techie, you had no idea really how to set that up and someone would show you. And it feels a lot like that with smart glasses today. And so from our perspective, we're like, why is it that the next evolution of computing feels older than the current evolution of computing? So what we wanted to do is create something that would have utility out of the box. And there we basically brought together the same technology and created an AI assistant called CASSI. And we're using the contextual awareness technology that we've created for CASSI to have an understanding of your physical environment and real-time understanding to assist you with, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. An initial sort of application or vertical of that became the enterprise sort of world. And that includes industrial, healthcare, factories, and so on. But the common denominator across all of those is that the businesses now have a clearer return on investment because they're now buying glasses that has a utility out of the box versus before where they would have to buy glasses that's $3,500 per unit and then invest another $50,000 to $100,000 just to build a bespoke application for them to use it. So like imagine you bought a laptop today and then I said to you, okay, now good luck, spend another $100,000 to build yourself an application to use it on your own laptop. That's the kind of market that we're talking about when it comes to smart glasses.
Okay, I want to come back to CASSI in a minute. I think everything that you've just explained to us there is one of those instances that happen to so many startups, which is what market do you go for? What is it that you're actually producing? And the inevitable pivot that you think you're going in one direction, but actually you need to go in a different direction. So coming back to CASSI in a minute, I want to hear from you about what that journey felt like from when you started to where you are now, and then we can pick up on CASSI afterwards.
Got it. We did explore many different approaches and the kind of markets, but I think you're right when you say that most startups try and figure out what market to go to, and they spend an awful amount of time experimenting and doing. So it's for us, it's simply the journey was that we took the technology and tried to bring it as a development toolkit, and we felt that it was very hard to get developers to adopt technology where they have to pay for it. Unless you're talking about something very new or there's a small niche you can target. Generally speaking, development toolkits are, by the majority of developers on the market, seen as a software that they could just pick up and use and not pay much on it, or at least pay royalties and not really anything upfront. So that was tricky for us, and it was a market problem for us. But we were always obsessed about AR smart glasses. And so the team was always focused. We knew that was going to be the eventual thing. So it was never really a surprise for us to sort of look and say, okay, what's next? We always had that at the back of our minds. We just wasn't sure about the timing. So we spent about 2.5 years doing R&D and going to developers, trying to understand what they want from this tech.
Well, I think that's the key thing, right? Because you weren't just locked away in the lab building tech. I think in your words, you said you were knocking on doors. You were going to have conversations with developers, OEMs. Sounds like there's a lot of effort put into the kind of business development side of things. You were doing a lot of competitive analysis by buying all the products and trying them and figuring out where the limitations were in the user experience and those kinds of things. So I think that's like interesting for people that might be listening, thinking about, how do you discover your market? it sounds like you're putting just as much effort into the research, the market research, not the the technology R&D research and the business development side of things as you were in the technology.
Absolutely. I always think that the most important thing is when from our perspective anyway, I think we spent a lot of time trying to understand problems that we could solve, but not actually taking any advice for what solutions to offer. And I've heard this many times as well, but it's better to, like, customers know their problem. Like, they know exactly what their problems are, especially when we talk to OEMs. They were saying to us that, glasses, there is not a lot of reasons to buy one. It's very hard to sell it because there's a lot of friction in the market. It's the price is too high. And we took all those problems and we're like, that's correct. But whenever they offer us a solution, we said, no, that's our job. In fact, try and avoid listening to the solutions. Always listen to the problem. Because kind of like going back to Henry Ford's sort of quote, which is, if I had asked what people wanted, they would have just asked for faster horses. Clearly, they knew what the problem was. Horses were too slow. They would get tired very often, but they didn't have the creativity to come up with a solution. So startups, I believe, just in generally speaking, the whole purpose of a startup is to be a creative problem solver. But you have to understand the problem that you're solving deeply. And that's where you take as much information as you can from the market. But don't listen to solutions. Come up with the solution yourself. So we did do a lot of knocking, and we found actually that the problems that were, weirdly enough, it was hard to tell a developer, like, oh, context awareness is an important problem, because developers didn't quite see it. So many of them were sort of trying to learn how to create AR applications, and they weren't even used to them, to the medium, let alone be aware of the problems. And I see that often in the especially in this industry, where startups are solving problems that people aren't even aware of, them being problems. And so they're waiting for the problem to be known before what they're offering is viable to the market. So for us, when we went to the OEMs, we actually found OEMs, clearly, they felt the same problems as us. They actually said the same things as we'd already observed, whereas developers didn't quite know that yet. Developers just want to create, and they'll create for whatever platform is available for them. But whereas OEMs were saying, look, we can't sell enough units. This is a tough market. Like, for example, last year, there was only 400,000 units sold globally for smart glasses. It's not a lot of, no, it's nothing. And you have to ask yourself why. It's because they're useless. There's nothing you can do with them. And so we were like, why do we actually just make these things useful and do something that you can't do in any other platform?
Yeah. So that then kind of signaled your pivot to actually then looking at the operating system for these kind of devices and like controlling the user experience.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. We also offer a range of high-quality meeting spaces for hire, and for tech event organisers, our auditorium, lakeside pavilion, and atrium spaces are perfect to bring your communities together for in-person and hybrid events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.
So talk to us then about CASSI and how you've taken this leap into OS and AI driven assistance.
Yeah, the pivot really was happening slowly. It wasn't like a pivot that would happen overnight. The pivot took a whole year where we went, okay, let's learn and learn and learn, and let's observe and talk to as many customers as we can. The main transition here is that there is a growing market of what we call AI-powered wearable devices. And wearable devices already are a large market, but the reason why we see this as an emerging market within that market, being AI-powered, is because the advent of generative AI has given sort of a new life to wearable devices. And we saw that as the key the key variable to unlocking the potential of smart glasses. Because what is the problem with smart glasses? There's not much you can do with them. What is the solution that generative AI provides? Provides a lot of content. For free, basically, right? Close to free anyway. The problem that we were seeing was that OEMs were saying, oh, we'll wait for the developers to create apps for our platform. And we're saying, okay, that's great, but how do you create something at the beginning to get developers to buy your platform? And they didn't have a good answer for that. But when we said, what if there was an aspect of generative AI where you don't need to wait for hundreds of applications to exist on your platform before customers can buy it, but there is at least one solution that offers many kinds of like assistance and solutions in various verticals out of the box, and generative AI provides that solution.
So what would be a good example of that then? I think I'm right in saying you're thinking about kind of more industrial applications of these wearables. So what would be a good example of a wearable in an industrial context? How would generative AI, what sort of use case would that deliver?
A simple example is CASSI can see what you see, can hear what you hear, and is aware of your physical space around you. So for example, let's say you've got an assembly line, it can see the bill of materials in front of you, and you can just say, hey, CASSI, help me build this product. And CASSI, because it's already observed the surroundings, it will tell you where is the nearest components that you need to fetch to bring it back together, put it together, and show you a step-by-step instruction.
Right.
And if you get stuck, you can ask, where does this go? Or did I mess up the order? And because you've got a natural language interface, it can actually understand the intent behind that question, deconstruct that question, and link the aspects of that question to the physicality. So when I say this, it is aware of what I mean by this because of where I'm looking when I'm saying that.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's combining different modalities to give you assistance that is in real time. Another example that's less industrial, but I think easy for everyone to sort of understand, and we do try this, it's quite fun, is you can open the fridge and say, hey, CASSI, what can I cook with these ingredients today? And CASSI will take some time and go, okay, well, here's some ideas. And it's just simply like looking at what's available and it's coming up with the ideas of what kind of dishes are out there and trying to put something together. Sometimes it's quite creative. Sometimes it's giving you dishes that are very well known. But the key here is it's combining vision, real-time perception in general, 3D understanding with generative AI. And we believe that's kind of like the most important ingredient for smart glasses, because everyone sort of thinks about smart glasses and the instincts they have is it needs to be very 3D and visual. We believe it's not about visual, it's actually about contextualization. Yeah. And more importantly, it needs to augment the mind, not necessarily just a vision. It needs to augment the mind because that's the medium.
And you're focusing on the operating system rather than the hardware. So the compute power that's necessary, and I guess is it edge-based cloud compute, or is it actually on the device?
It's hybrid.
Okay,
it's hybrid, yeah.
But you kind of don't concern yourself with that. Is that accurate? Because you're more focused on the operating system rather than the hardware. So yeah, do you just kind of have certain specs that the OS will need to run against?
Yeah, and to be honest, like when you look at the existing smart glasses in the market, overwhelming majority of them run Android. Yeah, just like basic Android, open source Android. And the great thing about smart glasses is they've basically got the guts of a smartphone. So it's not like an alien hardware. The only thing really alien about it is the design and the display. Yeah. Everything else is we're familiar with that because it's essentially a smartphone. But there are so many challenges in the hardware side, and actually the software has to complement those challenges, or at least has to address or work around those challenges. So, for example, there is a lot of limitations of power consumption because you have a small device, you have a limited battery capacity on those devices, and so you can maybe get 2 or 3 hours best from these devices, lightweight smart glasses. So the operating system not only does it need to be efficient, but it needs to power and manage the power consumption of different sort of protocols. So, for example, CASSI is running in the background of the operating system. And what it's doing is it's contextualizing your environment. But we've developed it in a way where it has states. So, for example, when you're sitting still, you're not really doing much, the system is basically asleep. And it's just a wearable device. But when you're walking around, moving around, it is on like sort of like standby. And then there's a mode where it's hyper. And that's when you're querying the system. So when you're actually asking for a question, the system has to look at the environment and actually understand the environment, look at the last few things that's happened around you, what we call the context frame. So it's framing the data that's come through for the last few minutes. And then it's taking that query and then it's making sense of that query and responding to you. But to do that, you have to go real low level. And the operating system needs to manage that really well. Because if you just build an app that did that, first of all, that's going to burn the battery in like half an hour. But secondly, and more importantly, what we're trying to do is create a new interface technology for this sort of like smart glasses. But we don't believe the future of smart glasses is going to be the same as like smartphones where you have apps and then you just pick an app like an icon. And we see that as a mistake again with current products where they don't really have a good solution for what the interface should look like. So they kind of bring over existing ideas from smartphones or tablets. And so you turn on the smart glasses today, and it's like usually you see these just like icons in a tray, and you think to yourself, first of all, how do I select this?
Yeah.
I got to figure out where the buttons are. And then secondly, why would I want to select this like that? And so, this system basically rethinks the way an operating system as an interface should look like and works backwards and says, everything should be seamless. Everything should be ambient. You shouldn't really see anything unless you need to see it.
It's kind of always on, and then you just trigger an interaction. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you found yourself back in Cambridge in 2022, but I believe you were here earlier than that. So I believe that you had a work placement at Play Fusion.
Yeah. So I started my engineering doctorates, and which means you get 3 years of 3 years of engineering, industrial placement. And I was introduced to the great, it's just an incredible team there in Play Fusion, and I really fell in love with what they were doing, because they were working on building an engine for AR applications. And my research at the time was improving contextual awareness for AR. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect playground for me to go in and have contact with the end customer, understand their problems, but also build some kind of real solution that actually addresses those problems. I always felt isolated doing a PhD in a lab. I never liked the idea of doing it in a lab. I always liked the idea of being at the front lines and sort of working with a product that's actually in people's hands. So that was a great opportunity. And the team they were incredible. They're ex-Jagex. And so I learned a lot. Some of them were my childhood heroes, because I played RuneScape. So I was like, okay, this is amazing. I'm learning a lot. I learned a lot from them. And slowly I kind of worked away from research engineering and more close to sort of closer to sales and like technical sales. And that's when I fell in love with the idea of taking the ideas that I've had and thinking, can I just do something with this myself? Because first of all, the PhD is long and I don't have that patience. And secondly, I felt that the problems I was trying to solve wouldn't be solvable in a PhD anyway. So I'd make great contributions, but I really wanted to actually solve them. And usually the PhD is not long enough for truly solving those problems in a way that scales and has impact. So my co-founder, Dan, we worked before together. We worked on a game called Timebreaker. It was a mobile game, and we released it on the Android and iOS app stores. And we got, I think, like nearly 100,000 downloads. And, we did it with nothing, no budget. So we felt quite good about that, I think, project. And so when we came back and when I was leaving Play Fusion and he was leaving his old workplace, we thought, okay, there's definitely something here and we can work together again. But this time it's spatial computing. Yeah. So it's a good fit. Yeah.
And then you found yourself back in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And so what was your draw? Was it that experience that you had there, being close to R&D? What brought you back here?
After the Play Fusion placement, I moved back to Bournemouth with Daniel, and we spent basically 2 years there, really working part-time. I was doing like part-time lecturing at university and just trying to sort of gather people and build prototypes. And then, this was during the beginning of COVID as well. So we spent a lot of time kind of just building and like in cave mode, just build. And the team we put together a lot of them actually were from Bournemouth initially. So after COVID and after lockdown, we thought, okay, we want to position ourselves in a place where we feel that we're in a good ecosystem. And we even talked about going Silicon Valley at one point. But we thought, okay, for now, let's go Cambridge, because Cambridge to us, it still is the Silicon Valley of UK. And my own experience being at Cambridge, I did fall in love a little bit with Cambridge. So it's hard to ignore that.
Great.
Nice. So we've talked a lot about, your journey. We talked about the technology and the pivot. So where's Phantom right now, in terms of, I guess there's different things we could talk about here, but, give listeners a sense of where you are now with the technology. Have you started to find customers, funding, size of the team? Give us a flavor of where the company is right now.
We're actually quite a small team still, but we are growing. So we're a team of 6, mostly engineering really, but we're a team of 6, and we just announced, actually, this is post AWE, which was in EU, Austria. We just announced a partnership with DigiLens. And DigiLens is a Silicon Valley-based AR platform company, and they've been building waveguides and display technologies for augmented reality glasses and heads-up displays for maybe 12, 13 years at least. But a year ago, we found that they're working on an AR device, and we met with the team. We really liked the team. We started working with them, and we just announced a partnership. So early next year, the DigiLens Argo, which is their AR glasses, will come out, and it will feature CASSI out of the box. Okay. So our software is in all those devices, and it's a bit like Amazon Alexa or Siri, but again, difference here is initially it has vision, and it can assist you with spatial and contextual queries. Over time, we're working on the operating system, and we've got some initial, let's just say, discussions about that. Actually, we've got one today, so a lot is happening very quickly. So we fundraised last year. We raised a pre-seed round led by SFC Capital, and then we launched another round that's interim round. So it's really us trying to raise angel funding until we felt that we were ready in terms of commercial and go to market. Yeah. And we reached that point now. So we're now closing that round and opening the seed round. And the seed round is our VC round, the first VC round really, looking to raise about 3.2 million pounds. And really for that is to deliver on the current and upcoming licensing deals. Yeah. Which is licensing CASSI and the subsequent technologies that power CASSI to the OEMs.
It sounds really exciting. You know, you've got the big relationship with DigiLens, you're approaching your VC round. Is there anything else that you're looking out for in the next year or so? Any key markers you're going to aim for?
I wish I could give you more, but we haven't announced the other partnerships. So there's a couple of other partnerships that we'll be announcing, and we just can't wait for that. Really, our goal is to bring our system software, which includes the operating system and CASSI, to as many wearable devices as possible. And the exciting part that I wish I could share more about is let's just say there are other devices other than smart glasses that are kind of coming to market that are very unique. Yeah. I can give you an example. So Humane is a good example of that, right? I was
going to mention that. I got a lot of coverage a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Humane AI Pin is one of those products that we've been following them for a very long time. So we knew sort of like what they were working on, but I think that they've got a lot of courage, and I do respect the way they're pushing such a different idea into the market. But I do believe that that's one of the first of many kind of products that will come, sort of, these kinds of new ideas about what is a wearable device, what is a mobile computer, what should it do for you. And what we do see as a common denominator is that all of them will be AI-centric. All the new operating systems of the wearable devices of the future will be AI-centric.
And does that have a proprietary OS on it? Because I didn't see what the actually OS was in the coverage.
Yeah, it's called Cosmos. It's a proprietary OS, yeah. But there are a lot of OEMs that are waiting for other companies to build them OS. Yeah, and that's quite common, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great story, right? And we'll track with eagerness and maybe get you back on next year and see how things are going.
Let's do it. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It will really help others discover the show.